Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Family Matters. It's really good to have you all here tonight. Tonight we're talking to Rob and Rochelle Oosthuizen, and we're going to be talking about missionary work as a family, which is quite a cool topic because many of us go do missionary work as individuals or as a couple, or we wait till we're retired to do it. But Rob and Rochelle have been doing missionary work as a family over in Sri Lanka and Cambodia, among other places. They even had one of their children born while they were over there. And so they're going to share their experiences tonight and their encouragement about doing missionary work as a family. Good to have you here. Really good to be able to talk to you guys. So what sparked your interest in doing mission work in the first place?
Well, for me, when I was a very young lad, I can't remember what age I would have been, but I wouldn't have been in double digits. I wouldn't have thought. And my Auntie Leonie, in South Africa, came back to South Africa after doing, I think, 5 years of mission work in Costa Rica. And I remember being very intrigued by her stories and her experiences. And really, from that time onwards, I always had a longing and a desire to be involved in mission work at any opportunity. So that really is, and once I had a taste of it in Africa, yeah, I was just very keen to take up any other opportunities that came along. I don't know about for you, Sha.
I don't know really. I think it's because I always saw the Bible Missionary magazine lying around, and my dad always used to read it from cover to cover, and I did too. Found it fascinating. And I've always been interested in other cultures. So I guess, I mean, missionary work can happen in any country, but my interest was in taking the word to far-flung places. Yeah.
So did you both do mission work individually before you were married?
I certainly did, and to some extent in Zimbabwe, north of South Africa, and Ghana, and then 6 months in India and Nepal before we were married. And Rochelle had come to South Africa on a couple of occasions and been exposed certainly to, I mean, South Africa really is like a mission country to some extent because it's so multicultural, and a lot of the outreach work, if you go out to visit the native Africans in their rural settings, it's very much like mission work in a third world country.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So you started doing mission work together, obviously, as once you were married and had a family. Where did you go, and why did you choose those places?
Oh, I think the first place we went to was Mauritius, wasn't it? Which happened to be on the way to South Africa. You couldn't fly direct to South Africa in those days, so we met Rob's parents in Mauritius and spent a couple of weeks there. They'd been there before with the ecclesia doing Bible studies and visiting the, around the ecclesial members.
We only had Rosie at that stage, just our eldest daughter.
Okay.
And then
How long did you spend in Mauritius? How long did you spend in Mauritius?
A couple of weeks, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a short visit en route. Yeah.
And then once we were in South Africa, then Rob would go, because I just had the little one, so he would go off with his aunt and go and visit African brethren or contacts who are out in the middle of the bush somewhere, and they'd have Bible studies, and she ran a lot of correspondence courses and things, so she was making visits to very contacts showing a lot of promise. But I didn't do that.
But I guess our first more extended foray out into the mission field as a family would certainly have been the trip to it's more like an emigration to Sri Lanka for 2 to 3 years, and that was after trying to go to South America. We had asked the CBMA, and I think they got a bit frightened by the number of kids that we had. Yeah,
How
we
many
only
did
had,
you have at that point?
yeah, we only had 4 at that stage, but there had been repeated requests and appeals for help with Sri Lanka that we had read in the Bible Missionary magazine. And so when we found out that South America really wasn't an option for them, they said just not yet. The timing wasn't right for them there. So we wrote to the Perth committee who look after Sri Lanka, the ACBM committee in Perth, and they just were like super enthusiastic and supportive and encouraging. And delighted that we were willing to contemplate going. So we felt very well supported there, and that support really remained throughout our time. So we were 2.5 years then in Sri Lanka, about 7 months in South Africa before we returned back to New Zealand, and then another trip to Sri Lanka for 6 months about 5 years later. And then another 5 months or so in Cambodia after that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And a month in Malaysia in the middle.
With a bit of time in Malaysia. Yeah, so that's as a brief tour of duties.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Rob
no, that's
also
exciting.
Sorry, I was just going to say Rob has gone with the children at other times, you know, one at a time. He's gone to to Thailand for the Burmese.
I took Reuben with me to Thailand, and I took Rosie on a 3-week South America visiting trip for the ecclesias. So I've just tried where I can to take some of the children, because it's just a marvelous exposure to them of wonderful zeal in amongst contacts and young people who wanting to learn the truth, and it's just so refreshing and helpful for them to see that when the circumstances around have nothing to lend themselves to seeking prosperity and happiness. Yeah.
Yes.
So we asked earlier, I mentioned it earlier, why would you go with a family? I mean, it seems like, you know, you're going to have major trouble if you go with a family. Well, that would be, you know, what I would think. I know a lot of other people think that. You know, you've got health problems, you've got education, you've got less time to do the work. You know, what is the benefits of going with your family?
Good question.
Well,
the thing is, if you're keen and you're wanting to go and be involved in supporting local brothers and sisters and preaching in a different culture, and you have a family, you have 2 options. You either wait until your family's left, as you say, or when you're retired, or else you try and muster every bit of courage you can find and do it. So,
and did it take much courage?
Definitely, yeah. It's no small undertaking when you've got little children. I mean, you don't know how their health will be. You don't know what access to medical facilities you'll have. You don't know how they will settle. You don't know whether they will manage with the food there. So there are all sorts of things that we're concerned about. One of the real blessings that helped us by God's grace was that there was a very supportive couple who were leaving Sri Lanka that we would be taking over from. And we plied them with questions, really, and they gave us a lot of local knowledge and information, which was very encouraging for us. Yeah. And then they stayed, I think, for about a month after we had arrived to help us settle into.
Yeah.
And did your children adjust quite well to being in a different country and a very different culture?
Yeah, for sure. Way better than the parents.
Children initially find it very difficult because they like things to be the same, you know.
Yes.
But once they they get used to the concept of, you know, the heat, you know, what they can eat. And we worked hard to try and find things to keep them busy. And I mean, for instance, Rob built a sandpit at the mission house, you know, and they managed to find some diggers and things for the boys. and we found a blow up paddling pool. No one else had ever seen one like that. But you know, those sorts of things to kind of ease the transition for them. And then they start to make friends with the neighbourhood kids, and within 6 months, certainly a lot sooner, but within 6 months, they just are totally adjusted. You know, there would be no hankering.
That's their new home. Yeah.
Yeah, because they were quite, you know, our eldest was 7, nearly 8. You know, 7, 5, down in, you know, hops of 2 years. So they were still reasonably young. I think perhaps once children are older, it makes it a little bit more difficult to adjust.
Right.
Yeah.
But the one constant for them was the schooling that we were doing, because we had chosen to homeschool. And one of the reasons for that was that we hoped that that might be transferable for them if we did undertake some mission work. So that was a real blessing, because at least that was familiar for them. And when it was school time, they knew it was the same here as in New Zealand. They could carry on with that. So that was a great help, I think, in settling them. But other families we know of have tried to put their children in schools, or have just done the same, have started homeschooling when they were doing mission work. Others in India did that, didn't they?
I mean, we did look at putting their children in the local school, but their schools are quite different to ours. So you wouldn't want to, you know, I mean, the one school we went to was apparently a good international school, and it just looked like a giant chicken coop. You know, there's no glass, just all this netting on the windows, and it was a concrete block, you know, multiple stories high, and I don't know, there must have been about 500 kids there, and then a big patch of dirt outside to play on. So we said thank you, but no thank you, after speaking to the principal. You know, they thought no. And if they wanted to go to a nice school, it would have been, you know, prohibitively expensive, and they would have had to spend an hour and a half in a van each way to get to school and home again. So yeah, we thought we could spend their time better than that. You know, they could have their school done in that van time. And you know, we could pack up the kids and go off and do 2 or 3 days, you know, trip out in the back country visiting contacts and things. It didn't really matter if they missed the school for that period of time.
Yeah, or we would just take along some essential school things, and they could do that along the way if necessary, if the trip allowed for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow. So what did your day look like in Sri Lanka, for instance?
Can I just go back one?
Okay.
And just go. So what were the big advantages? Did you have some big advantages of having a family there?
Yeah, I'd say certainly so. The biggest advantage, I think, above all, was that it allowed the local people to see that we were there amongst them like locals, and that we were living there a life as a family, that we weren't tourists, and that we were therefore facing the same struggles and challenges with everyday life that they were. And that really, I think, just helped us warm to the locals a little more readily. And then by virtue of the fact that you have children, I mean, Sri Lankans particularly, they dote on children anyway. So having your own children there helped in building rapport with our contacts hugely. So that was a major plus in trying to present the gospel really as a family-orientated gospel, where what happens in the home with family is all extremely important part of our witness.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so it went a long way to building a Sunday school and that sort of thing, I suppose, too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as soon as we turned up, the Sunday school quadrupled in size. I think there was one child that Ken and Dorothy used to have for Sunday school, but then of course there was our 4, and then once, you know, we'd been there a couple of weeks, the kids there are lots of neighbours with lots of children, and then they're all interested in these little white children, because you don't often see a lot of tourists, but not so many children. Very few children. So then they would come over and play, and then the kids would say, "Come to Sunday school." So
it wasn't any virtue of our own really that attracted children by any means. It was more so that our children was seen as an opportunity for the parents of other children to have their kids learn a bit of English and to have some company with people from abroad. But that gave us opportunity really to just to share Bible stories with them. And
Cool.
that had a counter blessing for our own children, of course, because then they would look forward to having all that company at least once a week.
That's
Yeah,
right.
great.
Yeah.
Sorry, your turn.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, can you share with us what your day looked like? What your every day might have looked like?
It usually began early with me going out to try and find some ripe papaya, pawpaws,
Okay.
and passion fruit and bananas to make sure that I could have that prepared for the family when they were up. But we would begin then
on the bicycle, what's more,
yeah,
on the
go
bicycle.
out on a bicycle, and then we would come back. I would might have prepared that, but then we would do the Bible readings together as a family, and then it would be homeschool, while I then usually prepared some classes or used to help with translation of booklets, because a brother who was in Sri Lanka used to come around to do translation work of English pamphlets into Sinhala, the local language. So I would work with him on that and try and help with some of the typesetting. Perhaps go then out and do jobs in the morning again while the children were schooling. So it could be visiting the printers, standing in lots of queues for paying bills, looking at placing advertisements. And then generally in the afternoons were the better times for visiting families or contacts. So that's when I would desert ranks again and go out and meet with contacts and have Bible classes, while Rochelle continued with school or with the daily round really of washing and cleaning and cooking and looking after the kids. And some contacts would come to the house for classes. So they would all, again, take place during the afternoon or evenings. And yes, then I'd come back for tea, and I would, on a number of evenings of the week, I would also go out again after dark to go and have classes at people's homes. So that was, Rochelle didn't get out and about a lot, but we did go on fairly regular trips to go and visit contacts and brothers and sisters in distant areas. So we would then all bundle into the mission van, which was purchased 6 months into our stay. And then we would head out and do that together as a family. And the kids would just sit quietly while we had a class with contacts. So quite a large part of our life was unscheduled there, in the sense that we were on the move as a family, either visiting contacts or going down to Colombo, because there were things that we could only do in Colombo as the capital, like visa renewals or buying essential things we needed that weren't in the fishing village where we were staying. So yeah, we did a lot of miles in the car, but during that time we listened to lots of Bible verses to song for the children, and they still stuck in our memories from that time because they went round and round and round. So
Good.
it was a very beneficial time, really, to spend all that time together.
It was. I was just amazed, and as people commented about it when we got home, how quickly the children learnt to be as self-sufficient and self-directed and being entertained, just as the kids in the local kids are. They play with nothing. They just go out and play. I don't really know what they do. They make up games, and then after a while, our children started doing it too. You go somewhere and then they just take themselves quietly off somewhere and they'll be playing, it was within, you know, within a walled compound or just outside the house where we were inside talking to somebody, you know, a contact.
Yeah, they would amuse themselves
Just
very
amuse
easily.
themselves, you know,
Mm-hmm.
find an insect or watch some ants or play some sort of game. Marco Polo seemed to be one of the ones. I didn't know what that was.
Oh, yeah. So one of the questions that I know a lot of people wonder about is that when you decide to go and do missionary work, well, whether as a couple or a family or individually, how does that work financially? Because obviously you're gonna be you've still got expenses and you're not working presumably.
Yeah, very much so. So I mean, primarily we relied on a living allowance from the ACBM, and they were willing to help us with that on a month by month basis. So that at least gives you some peace of mind that you'll be able to feed the family and provide for essentials. So that was a real blessing. But then we had obviously a substantial commitment to get to overseas in the first place with our airfares. And while we had some savings towards it, it was a huge cost that we were facing because there were 6 of us initially, and by God's grace, so we were sent a check for the full airfares by a very kind brother,
Wow.
and that again was just huge encouragement for us to.
It was actually God's
Yeah,
will
that was God's will for us to go and to not be faint-hearted. So that was a blessing there. And then while we were abroad, you know, there was a time when we wanted to go to, we would love to have gone to India to attend a Bible school for some encouragement and meet with other brothers and sisters because there's so few in Sri Lanka. And again, there's a New Zealand missionary trust here which supports New Zealanders that are doing mission work abroad, and they sent us some money to enable us to be able to take the half-hour flight across to Bangalore in India and to be able to attend that school. And then just here and there, brothers and sisters, sent us, $100 and said, please do something together as a family with us. We'd like you to have a treat or something. And those little things really lifted our spirits and allowed us to do more than what our conscience either would have allowed us or we were able to. Yeah.
Right.
And then the other big challenge that you face often is that you have a mortgage, you have a house, you might have local commitments that you're leaving behind. And we were blessed to have tenants on both occasions when we left for extended periods. We had tenants in the home, which were then able to cover the costs, the running costs, the rates, insurance, and everything else. Yeah. So
did you rent your house out fully furnished, or did you put your things into storage while you're away?
we had have a double garage. We boarded off one side of it, and then we stashed all our goods downstairs and said that wasn't being leased.
Right.
So that was a great help. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Did you have to cope with any sickness or major issues while you were away overseas?
Oh yes.
Well, yeah.
That's the first time when we were there.
Oh, you mean in Sri Lanka? Well, I mean, obviously I had a baby over there. That's a major issue.
That's major.
I really thought I should come home. I really thought I should just come home and have the baby. And it's amazing. It wasn't God's will I should come home because, I mean, I had so many individual little aspects of encouragement. The first one was that my mum, and without consulting me and without even knowing I was pregnant, went ahead and booked a ticket to visit us in Sri Lanka. And she was due to arrive like she arrived 2 weeks before the baby arrived. So she booked a long time before, that was 8 months before. So I had my mum there.
She was a huge help, huge help to us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then we managed to find a hospital through bumping into a lady. a Western woman who'd had 5 children there, and she was a doctor, and she said, "This is the hospital you have babies at," and but it was expensive. But somebody just took it into their heart to send us the amount of money that was required for, you know, the obstetrician and the hospital delivery care and all that sort of thing. So that was all just taken care of, you know. It was like the amount of money that was needed. Yeah, so, and multiple things, like just somebody who said, you know, you can use my car seat. I'd never seen anybody in Sri Lanka with a car seat, you know, or baby clothes. I didn't have any of that stuff with me. So I just, yeah, you could really see God's provision. Oh, and the other thing was that our visa was due to run out. And the second time we visited Sri Lanka, we had terrible troubles with our visas. So it's not an easy process. But in this case, when God's plan is that you stay there, then nothing is a problem. So Rob went to the visa office and said, our visa's due to run out. My wife is like 7 months pregnant. You know, can we have an extension, or do we need to leave Sri Lanka and go to India and have it renewed? Because we didn't want to do that last minute. And the agent was so helpful. He said, "Oh no, we love having families come to Sri Lanka, and I think you should stay. And look, this is the kind of visa you need to apply for, and you just need to put your children in local school and get them to do an art class or something once a week, and then you can have a visa to stay for as long as you like." And so we did.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and here I'm wanting to go home, and God's saying, no, stay. Everything's taken care of, you know. So it's very reassuring for your faith then, because you can see that it seems just overwhelmingly difficult, but actually it's not a problem.
It sounds like you've had some incredible faith building experiences over there then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you become very conscious of your dependency upon God and how much we do all need Him, because you feel so powerless, and so much is out of your control and so unfamiliar that you become very keenly and very earnest in your requests for help and support and guidance. So to receive it like that is very faith strengthening and encouraging. Yeah.
Yes.
So having Asher there was a great blessing. Again, it served to really encourage other people to see that we were living in the country well and truly if we were having a family there. And again, they just loved seeing a little white baby. For them, it was just something amazing.
But they also say that once we had a baby, they all, you know, often people say, "Oh, now you are locals. Now you are locals.
Yeah,
you're not foreigners. You are locals." So
they always referred to her as a Sri Lankan baba. Yeah, Sri Lankan baby. So that was fairly stressful at times, but thankfully, by God's grace, it worked out well. The first major illness that we had was just within a month or so of being in the country, and there was a terrible gastric flu that was going around, and it hit us. It just wiped out really the whole family,
one after another,
one after the other, and a few simultaneously, ending up with Rochelle. Thankfully, by God's grace, I didn't really get it.
Oh, that's true. And we have to just tell you as well that it actually, all the family room except Rob were in bed on the day. Once a month there was a Bible study day, so that took a lot of time preparing for that too.
People come from all over for this
20
one
people,
study day.
We'd feed them, we'd give them lunch and morning and afternoon tea, and Rob would do talks on a particular theme, and you'd advertise and send it out. And on that day, we were all upstairs in the mission flat, all sick as a dog and Piers with vomiting and diarrhea. And he's downstairs running around, doing the talks, making the tea, buying the lunch, you know, telling everyone, oh, it's fine, but just don't go upstairs, use the downstairs bathroom. Oh, it was terrible, wasn't it?
That was a pretty hard one, yeah. And then that evening, I think it was, or the next day, Rochelle started hallucinating, and her fever was so high, and she was in such a bad way. It was really, really tough. So anyway, the next morning we bundled everybody in to a tuk-tuk and went off to a visit a doctor. And
we phoned him up and he said, "Come in the back door, don't go in the front." He said,
yeah,
"Come in the
we
back
came
door."
in. We came in the front, and there's heaps of people in the waiting room there. And then one of the nurses said, "No, just come out round the back." So we felt a bit bad being ushered around to the back of the building, but he had a back entrance door to his consulting rooms, and there up on the it was up on the left-hand side of the door. We saw pasted up there the words of Psalm 91, and we had all been learning that together by rote as a family.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
And we found that just so encouraging when, you know, we felt like we were at death's door and we're, you know, doubting whether we were there for the right reasons. And yet that psalm, if you're familiar with it, is, you know, he that abides under the shadow of the Almighty, or dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High, shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And it's all about God's wonderful care for his people. So we found that tremendously encouraging. And he reassured us that it would pass, and we sort of hung in there. And thankfully, it didn't get worse. It actually got better for us.
It was just a new bug to the newbie. In fact, after that, I don't think we got sick at all, did we?
Not majorly. The kids occasionally would have low fevers, as kids do, as they're building up their antibodies and things. And in Cambodia, that was particularly a challenge, keeping the kids well when some of the food hygiene preparation is just horrendous. So the kids didn't keep so well in Cambodia, even though they were older and more robust really at that stage. But the other major challenge in Cambodia was Asha being stung by box jellyfish across her thighs and onto her hands. So that was very traumatic for a long time while she worked through those injuries as a consequence. But we're very thankful that she's still alive and well and can walk well, and no long-term effects other than very nasty scars.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like some very stressful moments.
Yeah. But
also
the encouragement
to see God
is there.
working. To see God working in all the midst of this must have just been so encouraging.
It very much was, because when you're without the familiar doctor, without the familiar medical facilities and care, it can be a bit unnerving. So to have all the extra encouragement along the way is a rich blessing. I mean, for us, we definitely look back each time and think, oh, that was, you know, one of the richest times of our life and family life together was doing that.
So you talked about like several financial donations that came in at various times that really helped. Was there any other ways that people at home were able to support you? You know, people in New Zealand or South Africa or wherever people were?
Yes, well, both Rochelle's parents and my parents came and visited us a couple of times in Sri Lanka, and that was hugely encouraging. You really hang out to see family and friends when you're away for an extended period. So that was a tremendous blessing. And then we also had visits from other people who were wanting to do short-term field work. So they might come for 2 or 3 weeks. And that was some were helpful, others were a hindrance, because they just came for a holiday at the rest home, you know, at the guest house.
Right.
But anyway, everyone's at different stages.
And sometimes it's people's, you know, that's the stage they're at. They need some exposure to it.
Yeah.
They need to be inspired, and maybe the next visit or the next one, they'll be, you know, they'll mature into it. We had some wonderful. Simon and Kate, my brother and his wife, they came twice.
Yeah.
And once people had been once as well, it was they gained there was extra advantage to them coming a second time, because then the local brothers and sisters knew them, and then, you know, they can take up again their relationship.
Yeah, they can be effective far more early on. Yeah. So yes, to answer your question, Sharon, visitors were very encouraging and supportive for us, but not everyone's able to do that. And others certainly wrote to us or phoned us. Phones weren't really working in our first trip because telecommunications were still very shonky.
And cell phones weren't really a thing.
No.
There was the brother and sister that we took over from. They were Dorothy. She used to send probably every 3 months she called it an FFP, a fun-filled parcel, and she just bought a whole bunch of little games or
Little
art
toys
supplies or whatever,
all
and
sorts of little fun things.
and send them over, and that was just wonderful for the
It's just
children.
like a glory pack for the kids. They just loved it.
That would have been great. Yeah.
Yeah, so people were very thoughtful and always encouraging us and saying they're remembering us in their prayers, and we really did feel well supported by the Brotherhood, particularly in Perth, and our immediate family were very supportive of our work there.
We did make an effort to write a newsletter probably every, I don't know how often. We tried to do it fairly regularly, but probably the gaps between issues got longer and longer.
As possible, more so than any timing.
Maybe 2 or 3 months, I suppose. And that kept it front of mind for people as well. And then they would send us an email. It was really lovely when people made contact and you knew that, their encouragement was there too, and prayers.
Yeah. So did you have any other, was there any particular story that you wanted to share there of your time away? Do you have any particular memory that, inspiring memory or
anything that particularly stood out?
Which trips that was on? So many. Anyway, I mean, for me, one of the most deeply satisfying experiences was something that came out of great tragedy, really, which was the 2004 tsunami. That we had only been in Sri Lanka for 3 months, 2 to 3 months, and then that tsunami hit all throughout. I mean, there were just tens of thousands of people's lives lost, and in parts of Sri Lanka, the wave came 3 kilometers inland.
Wow.
We were up the coast around the back of the island a bit, and it only came in about a meter high in the coastal fishing village where we were, and sort of pushed boats up an estuary area and crunched them up underneath a bridge. And I think only one man lost his life who was on the waterfront. But at the time that struck, the locals were it just started to panic because they didn't know anything about it. They didn't know what a tsunami was. And the first we heard of it was the neighbor coming racing down the lane, banging on everybody's gates and saying, "You must go, get out, water is coming, water is coming." So we didn't know what was going on, and started to make inquiries. We didn't have a TV, we didn't have, we couldn't understand the local radio or anything. So we went and spoke to a neighbor across the road who was standing outside her gate with her suitcase packed. And her English wasn't great. We got some idea of what was happening, and then I went a bit further up the lane, and there's another neighbor that I knew and watched CNN. He had CNN on his TV, and he had good English. So then I was able to appreciate that it had been a tsunami that had devastated so much of the country and around that area. So I decided to hop on my bicycle and head out and go towards the coast,
not away from the coast,
and not away from it, and just to see what it was, because from my school geography I figured that you wouldn't get repeat events like something like that happening within very short duration. Maybe it was foolish, I don't know, but anyway, when I remember, I'll never forget heading out on my bicycle onto the road, and it was just absolutely packed with motorbikes and tuk-tuks and cars and buses, all hooting and honking, with all their household belongings and possessions just piled up around them, all fleeing the city. And there was this white bloke on a bicycle going against the flow of the traffic, heading down to the coast. And it was beautifully peaceful down there, actually, because everybody had left. And I could see the damage that had been done, and it looked like it was settled back again. So anyway, I biked back to the mission flat, and we didn't have a van. We didn't have any vehicles. All vehicles were fully occupied. We didn't have a mission van. So we thought, well, if something does, by rare chance, come through again, we need to at least move all the leaflets upstairs from the downstairs storage. So we did that, trying to be as calm as we could and do it as quickly as we could for the children's sake, because they were a bit stressed. And then we just went upstairs, and I don't know how we were trying to listen in by some means, but I think we anyway, sometime later we heard that the threat had passed and people were able to come back home again. But anyway, what really arose out of that was that we did subsequent advertising, and we had some from individuals that showed tremendous faith and conviction, and were willing and keen to have classes for many, many months subsequent to that, and now remain as faithful members of the ecclesia in Sri Lanka.
Elders.
Elders, and really just absolute really in the ecclesia there. And we just, that really was the most satisfying outcome, I guess, that we could ever have hoped for, is to have people that would respond in that way. And to have their baptisms before we left after a year to 18 months of classes was was for us the most deeply satisfying thing.
Wow. That's amazing.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from that there were probably about 10 baptisms, weren't there, Shah? I think about all of Naomi's family and Sheila and their family and that. There were probably about 10 baptisms that came. They were directly would have
Okay, lost them for a moment.
been
Breaking up again.
Yeah. Okay.
linked to the post-tsunami advertising.
Because it wasn't very easy to advertise. Buddhists don't tolerate Christians lightly. There's been violence, bad blood going back. So you had to be very careful. Yep. Okay.
Careful.
Yeah.
You'd expect people who were already Christians to respond, which was the case for 99% of the time. Buddhist people wouldn't generally be interested. But after the tsunami, there was a lot of finger pointing, in the communities. You would see it in the newspapers. Buddhists say, tsunami, fault of Christians, and Christians say, tsunami, fault of Buddhists, because they're not following the right faith. So obviously people were looking for to put a religious, they're looking to put it in a framework to understand the events, so they were particularly fertile to listen to. That lecture that you did down in Colombo, lots and lots of people came to that, and that was really unusual, wasn't it? And then classes and things started after that.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to wrap up tonight. We're really grateful for your sharing of your experiences. Just one last question. Have you got any advice for people who may be thinking they would like to go and do mission work at some stage? And, about particularly with taking a family overseas?
It is very much an individual and a personal decision, because every family tries to be as effective in their witness and their support for their local ecclesias and local preaching as much as possible. But where folk do have a desire to go abroad as a family, if that becomes possible again soon by God's grace, we would certainly really encourage it. The shared experience of the challenges that you face as a family really help family relationships and rapport within the family. And then, because to be abroad as a family with the sole purpose of being there to witness and share the word of God with others helps the whole family and all the children appreciate that that's the reason for our existence, if you know what I mean, which it ought to be anyway, but it becomes that much more clear, I think, to see that is the reason for our family life in the Lord, is to share it with others as much as possible. So we would really encourage other families to pluck up the courage and to look for the support that is there to help them, whether it be financially or to other families who've been before, to share their experiences and to help clear doubts and anxieties that they might have, and then to consult with the Bible mission committees, because they have a on-the-ground awareness of where the need is around the world, and certainly in the Asia-Pacific regions for us down here, and know which countries are best suited for families, depending on the nature of the work, the conditions, the young people that might be there, that might be needed, and so on. So they can give a lot of good advice and help steer you in the direction so that you're not just going out blind. You really do want to work in with the ACBM to be best placed and well supported by them too. So yeah, and we'd be very happy to share our limited experience with others too, if opportunity arises, of course.
Cool.
But to be
Thank you so much.
Approach the thought, prayerfully, knowing that God wants the best for us, and He's willing to use, a willing heart. If it's the right thing for you, and you can be used, and
He'll open the doors.
Open all the doors. We've tried twice. Rob had a passion for South America, I think because of his aunt having been there, but I would say that probably at least twice the doors closed there.
We didn't go as a family.
The thing for us. It wasn't our first choice to go to Sri Lanka, but that's where we ended up. So, or even in Cambodia, you have to believe that God will direct. If you're willing to be wherever God wants you to be, then He'll guide you. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time tonight, for your expertise, for the inspiration that you've shared with us all. It's been really, really good.